So my name's Claire Dewhurst. I am the director of City Nation Place, and it's great to have you join us today for this session where we're going to be looking at events and how you sow the seeds of lasting impact with the events that you host in your city or your region. We believe that events can be an incredible growth driver for your community and for your place brand. And so we're really happy that we're able to host this webinar in partnership with Best Cities, who supported the work we did on our recent report, which looked at how you align your event hosting strategy with your place brand ambitions. It's free to download, and I am just going to put the link to that in the chat in case it's something that you haven't yet seen. But really today, I am delighted I can take a back seat, and I will be handing over to Lauren Christie, who is the Managing Director of Best Cities, who will be speaking with you today and having a wonderful chat with our other guest speakers. And I'm very pleased to be able to welcome Adrienne from Cape Town and Western Cape Convention Bureau, and Sam from the Dublin Convention Bureau, and Milo from the Flanders Convention Bureau. Just before I do that, a little word of housekeeping. We're going to hear from Lauren, and we're going to listen to all of these lovely gentlemen in discussion. But if you want to ask any questions, please do. You'll see the Q&A button. You can post your questions when they occur to you. We might try and get to some of those during the course of the discussion or at the end of the chat. Lauren's going to come back to me, and I'll make sure that I put as many questions as I can to our speakers today. So with all of that, I am going to hand over to Lauren and turn my camera off and listen along with everybody else. Over to you, Lauren.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Claire. So again, we're here to talk about the sowing the seeds of lasting impact, and really talk about how hosting events can have an incredible, be an incredible growth driver for your community. Just want to talk a little bit, next slide there, please, Katie, on who I'm actually representing. Many of you may know the Best Cities Global Alliance, some of you may not, but I'm the managing director of this alliance, which represents 13 DMOs from around the world: Berlin, Cape Town, Copenhagen, Dubai, Dublin, Guadalajara, Houston, Madrid, Melbourne, Singapore, Tokyo, Vancouver, and Washington, D.C. And all of these destinations have many things in common, but one of the things, and what brings us here today, is that all of them use business events as a force to make a positive impact, not only locally on their communities, but through the associations that they're working with, and frankly, around the globe through those efforts that they do. So really delighted to be here today with two of my destinations, both Sam from Dublin and Adrienne from Cape Town, but we're also joined by Milo from Flanders, from a regional perspective in the section of Belgium that does a lot of work in this area as well. So let's dive into to the session. Next slide there, please, Katie. Today, we have a couple things we want to do. We want to make sure that you leave and understand why legacy planning is so vital to event hosting. Know a little bit about the partners, stakeholders that you need to get involved, maybe learn a little bit from some best practice case studies from our three panelists, talk about measuring the impact, which is always so very key, and making sure that there is buy-in from your stakeholders. I want to talk a little bit about the Best Cities Incredible Impacts Program, which we run in partnership with ICA, and I'll leave a little bit of that at the end, where we'll also leave some time for some Q&A. But as Claire said, if you have anything burning and urgent, feel free to throw it into the chat, and otherwise we'll make sure that we get to those questions at the end. Little context setting as to why we're bringing you this session today. Last year, in conjunction with SMS, an organization out of Australia, Best Cities did a global association trends report called Purpose Under Pressure. And we surveyed 586 associations from around 30 countries across the globe. And it was interesting to see what some of their priorities were. In the top slots, unsurprisingly, were financial stability, membership engagement. But what was really interesting for us and sort of validating for the work that we do is that floating around the 5 or 6 spot consistently was the need for a legacy creation. 70% said that it was extremely important of those 586 associations, and that although it may not be their number one burning priority, it is something that for all of them is increasing in importance and something that they want to prioritize in conjunction with destinations. And so when they're looking at bringing their meeting or event to a destination, They want a destination that's aligning with their mission purpose. They want to have an opportunity to create long-term societal impact. They want immersive local experiences over pure infrastructure. And they want that co-creation. And that's really key, is that we really come to a point when we talk about legacy and impact, it's not just on the association or just on the destination or any of the other stakeholders in the ecosystem, but it's really a group effort. And they're really looking to destinations to make that effort in bringing legacy and impact alive. And so with that, I'd like to dive right into our panel, because these are all three destinations that are doing an amazing job at bringing that legacy and impact to life and working strategically with their clients. And so I'm going to start off with Adrian. Adrian, why does your destination, Cape Town, believe it's important to include impact as part of your business events strategy? Oh, he may be muted. There we go. The fun with Zoom. Doesn't matter how long we do it, we still have issues.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, so specifically Cape Town, and I think for the purposes of this conversation, we're also representing a little bit of the developing world, and maybe a different kind of context in terms of bringing the African conversation into the mix as well. Within Cape Town, really, legacy is embedded in how we approach business events. It is so immediate, it is down the road, the impact of not just the jobs that business events create, but how that knowledge gets transferred into broader society and communities. We host probably about 60 to 70% of our business events sits within the medical space. And those are kind of crucial for the broader society, not just in South Africa, but on the continent as a whole. So it is crucial as part of our strategy. It is, and of course, it's also our value approach to associations when they come into our destination, is that they are not just philosophically making a difference, they are actually really having an impact with not too much effort.
Very good. And Milo and Flanders, you say, talk about impact. It's not about the quality or not about the quantity. It's more about the quality, and that more is not better when it comes to impact is sort of your slogan or your thought. Can you please explain that a little bit more and how that plays out in Flanders?
Yeah, indeed. Thanks, Lauren. We've moved on indeed from focusing on purely economic impact to really looking at that long-term societal impact that is rooted in local communities, local ecosystems. So we see conferences as a means to an end. The conference itself is no longer the goal. It's really what it leaves behind when the conference has left our destination.
Very good. And I think moving to Sam with a question, Fulcher Ireland recently or somewhat recently launched a new 2030 strategic plan. And within that strategic plan, it has actually embedded impact as part of it, which I think is a really key part of making this happen and shows the importance that entire ecosystem in Fulcher Ireland puts on impact. Sam, can you just explain a little bit more about how you arrived there?
Yeah, well pronounced, by the way. Congratulations on the Fulcher. Yeah, it's a new strategy, new-ish strategy. It was signed off last year by our minister. First time ever to have a business event strategy signed off by a government minister in Ireland. And similar to what Milo was saying, we have expanded the pillars, the measurement pillars, from what business events can deliver from just a pure economic side to the environmental or climate action side, as well as the social impact. So I suppose we've added the footprint and the handprint piece to how we measure and how we impact, or how business events impact locally. So that business events 2030 strategy, the three pillars: economic, what it delivers on the ground, the way many of us measure. On the environmental side, reducing the carbon impact that business events bring in. I think we all agree, I think we've had many debates post-COVID. We need to meet in person. People need to, humans need to meet in person. So it's what we can do to reduce that impact on the environment when we do that. But then the third piece is this intentional social impact, and that's the key pillar where we have now within Fulcher Ireland put a sustainability and social impact team in place, and they have been focusing on driving and delivering that intentional impact, or the social impact and legacy piece. And they've driven it through the development of the strategy, worked with Meet for Impact to deliver the framework and measurement tools. We're helping our industry understand it, and thankfully delivering and being recognized for it.
And you're finding, I mean, clearly, as I said off the top, more associations are looking to work with destinations on legacy and impact. And so now that this is embedded in your overall strategy, how do you deal with associations or why is it so important for you to support those who have this as part of their strategy? Like, do you find it's a competitive advantage for you these days?
Absolutely. Lower hanging fruit, without a doubt. And because we have, I suppose, with the team in place that can work with the association and listen, it all starts with a conversation, and the earlier in the process we can have that conversation, whether it's a bid process or bid stage or whenever a piece of business is confirmed, the earlier the better. So yes, it's competitive advantage because we can show that we're walking the walk as well as talking the talk with the associations. But it also, because of how we've extended into our industry and our wider ecosystem, I suppose the associations, everybody's speaking the same language, and the conversations can get deeper, and everybody just understands what impact and legacy is, and can then help develop what the project is and how, what type of outcomes we would like. So without a doubt, it's a competitive advantage because more and more associations are asking for it. You can see it in the number of applications for the Incredible Impacts Awards. And listen, blow the trumpet of best cities. The number of associations that we have signed up to the Madrid Challenge, which is all about intentional impact, that's growing year on year. So there are more out there, and I think the more that are hearing of what we can deliver and seeing the examples, of just doing social good. We're all global citizens. So it's the more that want to do it, the more they hear of it. It's a conversation starter and extender as well.
I agree. Yeah, it definitely, the momentum is sort of switched to that. There's more that are interested than less that are interested. And Milo, in Flanders, how does Flanders Convention Bureau work with associations looking to make an impact? Is it similar to what's happening in Fulcha, Ireland, or how are you working with your clients to make this a reality?
Well, it all depends. I mean, there's lots of associations that mention that they want it, but today we see very few that actually have that ambition expressed and written in their bids. So the few ones that have that, I mean, that makes our job easier. We just connect them with the right stakeholders in the destination. We'll look at finding the right partners in their sector, in their domain, find policymakers, find entrepreneurs, look at the civil society, the end beneficiaries. And at that moment, we connect them, we bring the structure in, and that's the easy work. It becomes a bit more work when they don't have the impact ambition yet or the vision yet, and then our methodology comes into play, and then we can help them much more.
Yes, very much so. And so that excellent point. So not everybody's there yet or interested yet, or maybe don't even know about it. So Audrey, what do you say to those who do not have impact included in their strategies? Is Cape Town's goal to try to convince them, or how do you work that in when that's not at the top of someone's agenda?
I think it's probably less about convincing rather than guiding. And what we normally would say to associations is you are already doing impact on a lot of levels, from your scientific programs, from grants to getting young professionals in. So we generally start with what are you already doing? Out of the nature of your events, start there. We know that a lot of associations might start off ambitious, that it doesn't go anywhere, or that it is simply not a priority from the start. We also recognize that from a bidding cycle to execution can be multiple years with multiple committees. And those are obviously adding to the complexity of this. But what we try and do right from the beginning is to say, what is this conference in its bare essence? What are we doing that it might not have used the language of impact and legacy, but that is already part of the DNA of the event? And then in our context, again, bringing it back down to our environment is asking basic questions of what is your ambition in terms of abstracts? How many would you like to see from Africa? How many speakers would you like to see from Africa? On the exhibition floor, how many opportunities for regional companies? Those are all things that people will be doing in any case without money. And I think when we start and we break that down and we kind of like nearly uncomplicated legacy and impact, there's a longer conversation rather than it is simply too expensive, too complicated, we do not have the resources, etc., etc., etc.
If you make it less scary for them, Adrian.
Yeah, less
That's
scary,
right.
definitely. Yeah,
less scary, and
you can build on that. Once you kind of like have the conversation, you can amplify and bring in projects specifically in I think in all environments, but specifically in our environment.
Yes, for sure. And less scary, as you said, but also as you said, I think one of the keys for me when you hear about that is that often there's associations that are doing this. They're just not identifying that they're doing it, and they're not communicating that they're doing it. So it seems like it's scary because it's something new, but it's actually in many cases not new. It's already embedded in what they're doing, particularly, as you said, in all the medical associations that you're doing in Cape Town.
Or members. Could be members as well. Yeah. And even looking from our side with regards, like 70% of international conferences come in through ambassadors, like local conference ambassadors. So they want to do good, and they might be doing their own community stuff and outreach that doesn't really get up to the level. But yeah, if we know about it, then we can tie it together as a better good.
Yeah, and when you link that ecosystem together, the outputs and outcomes are much stronger.
Yeah.
Speaking of, pun intended, impact on the destination. So you do this as a destination. You're engaging in this, but there's got to be a bonus. And Milo, you mentioned about you're not as focused on the economic impact. I mean, obviously that's always going to be a component. But what has the impact been on Flanders otherwise? What are some of the reasons that you're doing this and engaging in this way with your association clients?
Yeah, so what we've seen so far is a double impact. The first impact on our region itself and the position of the region as a hub for innovation, and meaningful events, but also the role of us in the second role, as the role for us as a bureau has advanced to a more strategic advisor level. By shifting away from that pure economic role to a more strategic and future-oriented approach, that has really lifted our position as not just focusing on logistics, but really on how we can help them in the destination. It has strengthened our collaboration with the ecosystems in Flanders itself. We've seen a much bigger engagement with public and private stakeholders, but also and just that whole partnership between the international association, the cities, the academia, business partners. Just the fact that they work together on that conference project makes that we see new connections, which we thought were always there, but aren't always there. People, even within Flanders, meet one another for the first time when they start working on a conference. So yeah,
I think the DMO plays such an important role in this, being that broker, being that connector, and bringing all of, making that connection for those associations going into your destinations. Sam, you've had some pretty good successes as well when you talk about this. What have been the results that you've seen so far? Any numbers to share?
Yeah, and let's say, going back to Milo's point there first, I suppose one of the successes, and I will come into it maybe later on talking about stakeholders, but the broadening of our own ecosystem and stakeholders who understand what we do is absolutely a big success. But yeah, some numbers. Listen, it has rocketed, I suppose, from the start. We've now got 14 different impact stories that we can showcase, and we're a lot of them have already been I suppose, put onto film and into digital print as case studies that we're sharing, and you'll see a lot of it through LinkedIn. We're doing a lot with the iceberg, obviously. So yeah, we've 14 already, and a lot more in planning for this year and into next. We won both Incredible Impacts Awards last year at the Congress, so both the seed fund and the overall fund, so that was good. But I suppose one of the big pieces, and going back to what we were saying earlier about the low-hanging fruit, working with associations who have intentional impact campaigns, we had bid for one international association 3 times, and we were unsuccessful on 3 occasions. The 4th time we bid for it, we were up against the incoming president's destination, but we put a huge amount of work into the bid on the intentional impact piece, what we could do, showcasing what we have already done. And the said association had also been engaged through Best Cities at one of our global forums that myself and actually Nessa, who works with me, we had engaged extensively with, I suppose, the association lead on it. And at the 4th time of bidding, and I think that's the record, 4 attempts, we won it, and it was down to the impact. So that's well over 1,000 delegates coming in the next few years. But it just shows, we wouldn't have won the game without the intentional impact story or ideas in it. So it works. It works. So and then that translates into euros as well. So.
Yeah, it is becoming a differentiator. I truly believe that. Adrian, do you have any sort of stats and numbers on winning bids for your destinations just to share with the group?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, we've have probably confirmed around 58 international conventions, which makes about 35th globally, according to ICA. A large part of our kind of, as we said earlier, is the conversations around, what is this conference really going to contribute in terms of the economic sectors, but not just the beds night, but the development sectors. We've had recently the International Astronomical Congress, which created immense legacy with school groups, and just the exposure to the sector created real impactful conversations. Similar to what Sam said, is obviously we're building on these stories. We create legacy pieces around this, and it forms part of our bidding strategy. More and more, our own government is not just necessarily using terminology like legacy and impact, but they are moving to terminology called that we would call leveraging events. So it's much more intentional. It's a lot more where our government wants to see how are these events moving the needle. So we have to report a lot more on action and just not on intention. So from that perspective, I think these definitely contribute. The bid wins, the raising of the profile, what winning international congresses mean to the brand of the city and the destination. First and foremost, of course, hosting these events successfully not only benefits the Congress in those 4 days, but what the knock-on effect of the reputation, what it means to the broader economy, the visitor economy, et cetera, et cetera.
Love it. And I'd like to just, for the group here, I know some people maybe not as familiar in this space, but I think it's really important. We're using the words impact and legacy here, but as Adrian said, the language is the semantics. It's the intents and actions behind it that I think are really important. And so don't get too hung up on some of the sort of definitions and things. It's more about the intent and action, and, call it what you want. But I think that's important. The other thing I just wanted to quickly point out, we referenced ICA, which is the International Conference and Congress Association. And so they track international association congresses and all of their member destinations, which are in the many hundreds or even maybe over 1,000 around the world. And so that's sort of the reference in terms of attracting those associations to your destination. I do want to go back, Adrian, I'm going to stick with you. I want to go back to something Sam mentioned about stakeholders. We've talked about the destination. We've talked about the associations. Clearly, they're involved. Who else is involved? Which stakeholders do you need to get involved to make this successful?
Well, most of this is driven with academic partners. So I think you do need to have conversations with your key academic institutions, and in order to align this with priorities that might be relevant to them. A large portion of our discussions happens with our conference organizing industry. These are often the players that are budgeting and costing. And my view is always that if it's not intentional from the start, it's very difficult to bring it in later. And often those are attached to either financial conversations as part of the initial framework. So that's bringing in that broader civil society in terms of identifying projects. We often have these conversations with international associations saying, we would do something if we know what are the priorities of doing something. And this can be broader, softer, and I use that societal, community-based projects. And of course, these can be far more integrated into the sector development. But I think engaging with those players, and of course, then the associations as a whole. Notwithstanding, of course, government plays a very important role, because that is ultimately who's in our environment that's guiding a little bit of the ship in terms of the strategy. And of course, then ultimately the venues as well, because they are often the hosts of this. This also, the venues play, and the hotels then by extension plays a very important role, especially when we are talking about sustainability. When we are talking and having, and I think this is really for the context of this conversation, Lauren, just want to kind of like, also legacy and impact often gets very much having an exclusive sustainability conversation. It is only part of this conversation. A lot of destinations are different in terms of their sustainability journeys. And not everybody can have electric vehicles and offset things. So in different parts of the world, this conversation is relevant to the environment that they are in. But our venues and our and hotels play a really important role in guiding the needle a little bit on the sustainability conversations, because they have those for the most part embedded in the operations.
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent point. Sam, is it difficult getting this group of stakeholders on board? I mean, it seems like it's a lot of work.
Yeah, trying to get people to understand what we do, I suppose, is the first big hurdle of that. Yes, it is tough. What we did, I suppose, as we developed that strategy was we got, yes, our regular ecosystem engaged, our venues, our other convention, or all the convention bureau, local authorities, our conference organizers, the hotels, who else? I suppose our own government department as well, and the universities. But the universities, I suppose, more from finding those ambassadors, so it's the commercial side of it. We also expanded out to our investment agencies and our public health agencies as that strategy was developed. We got the right, and the research foundation as well, and we got the right people, and asked them and invited them and tried to explain what we were doing, and they bit, thankfully, and they came on board. But to broaden it and to help them see where we can help them to deliver, colleagues went through, as part of the writing of the strategy, went through government papers, government strategies, government positions, white papers, corporate plans for all of our government departments and took what their actions or what their outputs from whatever the lifespan of that paper was, and I suppose linked it back into how business events could help them to deliver. And we gave it back to them in their own language. We just sort of changed it around a bit to show, well, we can help you deliver this because this is the type of people we can bring in, whether it's semiconductors, whether it's, you know, in the public health side of things, whatever it happens to be. But using their own language, which helped them understand and get it better. So we now do have, I suppose, running through government departments an interest, and through our own government department, they're continually tying in with their colleagues to say, right, this is what business events can do to you. So yes, it is difficult, but there is a, you know, it sounds a straightforward solution. It's obviously laborious going through all those papers, but we have absolutely seen that it works. You know, if you can show how what you can do will make somebody else look better and deliver on their results, that's sort of, you know,
Yeah.
simplifying it, oversimplifying it, but that's, I suppose that was the premise that was taken, and how we've achieved it.
And in their language, which I think is a great
Exactly.
takeaway.
Yeah.
Speak
Because
to them in the
it's
language
much
of
easier. Yeah, much easier for
their
them to
benefit.
understand.
Yeah. Speaking of language, Milo, you talk in Flanders about the Helix ecosystem in your approach. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah, just confirming what Sam and Adrian said. When it is about rolling out the program in the destination, that's where we started off with the Flemish Agency for Innovation Entrepreneurship, the Investment and Trade people, Department of Chancellery, Foreign Affairs, you know, and of course the City Convention Bureau. So, and that's the laborious work just to get them on board and to understand how conferences can help them. And then when they are convinced, then we start working specifically on conferences. Typically, the initiative is taken by a professor or a group of professors or entrepreneurs, you know, industry experts. It's or maybe a patient organization. It's always one of those that starts the initiative. And what we try to convince them of is expanding their local host team, not just to stick to that one group that they're familiar with, but expand it into what we call indeed the quadruple helix ecosystem. And it's looking at bringing together academics, working together with entrepreneurs, with corporates, working together with policymakers, and then bringing in, even if possible, the end beneficiaries, so that they all together can look at what are our local needs, what is our common ground, where do we come together in what we all together want to achieve for those people whom we do it for. And that strengthens it so much more. And then an academic conference is not just like an academic conference, it becomes a broader goal, because the entrepreneurs in the destination and the policymakers will take part in that. And each of them play a different role. Of course, you need the academics for the scientific foundation of that work they do. But the entrepreneurs will look at, how do we bring it to the market? How do we make sure it's accessible to everybody? And government policymakers will make sure that it's embedded into policymaking for the longer term. And of course, making sure that we do what's right for those who need it is bringing in their voice, and they are the best. It's not about them, it's with them. So I know it's a difficult term, quadruple helix, but it's just, again, it's fairly simple. It's just bringing those four different groups who not typically always work together, but if you manage to bring those together, that's where the real magic starts happening.
Yeah, love it. I love it. Now, one of the big I call this the last hurdle of kind of that legacy impact journey is the measurement, and, you know, measuring that impact and making sure that it is measured. Sam, why is it important that there's a measurement coming out of this?
You have to justify it, don't you? You have to be able to show the return for the investment of time and money and people. And it helps tell the story more. For ourselves, I suppose we have KPIs within that strategy that I spoke about, and we report on them quarterly back up to government and essentially to the minister and potentially the cabinet. So we have to be able to measure the report. So we've developed that measurement tool to tell that wider story that I mentioned, and it was developed with Meet for Impact. And I suppose it comes back to legacy isn't just about doing good, but it's about proving it. And without the measurement, you can't prove it. and whether that's carbon calculators to community engagement metrics or whatever it is, that the future to prove that legacy is justified and valid, it lies in the measurement. With the International Social Housing Festival in Dublin last year, and they used our own Vulture Business Events carbon calculator, so that helped them to track their environmental impact. But we also measured social engagement for them. They had I suppose they brought the voice of the tenant into the conference for the first time, so that was part of the legacy and impact piece. So we helped them measure that engagement through participation and outreach, and it's still being measured as that goes on. So I suppose, yeah, the measurement gives legacy weight. It gives it that story that we can all tell and hang our hats on. And you can't really evaluate progress or replicate success without clear data and documented outcomes to tell you what you have done, and then to move to pass that on to the next destination as well. The association brings it with them.
Yeah, for sure. And I know with Best Cities, that's nice information that we're able to share amongst our destinations, which is great. But I think one of the things, just to emphasize, which you said, is, I think it's really important for people to understand, if they're doing this, the measurement isn't what you do at the end of the conference or the event. That's part of it, but it's that impact 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And if we really want to get great 5 years from now, where does that all go? So
100%.
Yeah, Milo, how does Flanders measure impact?
Yeah, and it's good that you mention it. So when we go through the design of that impact track, as we call it, it's not just about defining the impact intention and how we're going to get there, but it's really about bringing in that measurement strategy at the very beginning. And for each of the activities, for each of the objective for the outcomes that we're planning, is defining clear objectives, the indicators matched to that, and the data collection. Because if you bring it in early, it helps to ensure accountability from those volunteers that are working on it, because they know they're going to be measured on result. It helps getting that engagement of the partners involved. And then at the end, you have those tangible results that, as Sam said, it's once you have the data, you can talk about it, you can communicate about it. And it's really about filling up that, and that's also part of it, is bringing in the communication very early so that you can at least not only talk about what you've done, but prove it with numbers. So we bring it in very early before they start on actual organization and the logistics and the programming. The whole impact intention is defined with clear KPIs linked to that.
For sure. Adrian, is Cape Town's approach to that data measurement similar? Are there different things that you look at, or what do you look at?
Yeah, I mean, we take the inspiration from a lot of what is happening specifically in Europe in terms of the wonderful work that Sam, you guys are doing in Ireland. Obviously, our partners in Copenhagen, they do a lot of measurement tools and guidance on this. Flanders, of course, as well. Madrid does a lot. So we take a lot of that knowledge. What we find, and as I stated earlier, what we tend to do is to simplify the indicators to a couple of very kind of like, let's call it basic fields that is a lot easier to track and tells a story. We are developing and kind of like working a lot more on with AI, because I think that is really going to strengthen the ability for destinations who might not have the resources. If you have clear data points, I think AI is going to really contribute in order to just create narratives that are not just important for continued future congresses for the association, but more importantly, and especially I think with the audience that's on this call today, is the pressure on the destinations on how do we justify what we do in terms of, because I think if we look at who's attending this conversation, there's of course the conversation in terms of what this means to the associations, but there's also important parts of this conversation on what does it mean for the destinations? How are we measuring our own legacy and impact, and how do we justify our own budgets? Selfishly, we have to justify our own being by also reporting on this in the context of our own environments. And I think that's really important, is that we are really building on those narratives in terms of that. But of course, at the same time, it is important to have what Sam and Milo pointed out, and we try our utmost to incorporate those. We are not as resourced in terms of maybe other convention bureaus, and that might translate into keeping things simple moves the needle further for us, because you at least have something more than nothing.
Yep. Yeah, love it. And do you want to share do you have, we don't go into it where our time is just flying by here, as it always does, but do you want to talk a little bit, do you have an example, like a case study of some of the puts into action, some of the things you've just saying? I believe the International Astronomical Union you had in 2024 is a good example. Just maybe just tell people a little bit about how that brings some of what we've all talked about to life here.
Yeah, so I mean, it is just, I think, such a committed client, at least that came to the table with real ambition. But what they really wanted to do is they wanted to have open access for the conference, and they went to great lengths to open their content first and foremost to the broadest possible audience. They've, for those familiar with congresses on this call, they've created for each and every poster, they created individual Zoom rooms to project their presentations. And that technology, that investment of creating these special cameras for each of that, those were all donated to about 200 schools. So just the immediacy of that to underprivileged schools who just simply do not have that access. We brought about 2,000 school children through the exhibition floor. For most associations, on a certain time within a conference, that doesn't necessarily cost more money, but it creates specifically in this field a lot of kind of like end of school, when people are deciding what they want to do. It obviously creates a lot of exposure within the kind of STEM fields that really created such immediacy linked to that conference. So that is probably one of our biggest success stories. We've hosted the World FIGO, which is the world's largest gynecological meeting. The volume of policy that just is being discussed at this conference that translates immediately into the lives of so many millions of women around the world. So for us, those are probably would be our biggest success stories at the moment. With me, of course, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, and if anybody's else, I'm going to skip to the next question, but I will just shout out to say that we have lots of case studies of and examples of legacy and impact on our Best Cities Global Alliance website. So if you're interested in checking them out, we're happy to share. I believe Flanders is also very open to sharing their information and their journey as well. So this is information, you know, we're all in this to create a positive impact, and it's not proprietary. We want to share the information. We want more people to get on board. So, you know, I think we, you know, those of the destinations that are taking a leading role in this are happy to share that information. I do want to leave a little bit of time left, so I'm just going to very quickly go around and say, Sam, what final piece of advice would you offer to destinations or DMOs who are interested in getting involved with this?
Start the conversation, because I think you will be left behind, or maybe already are being left behind. if you don't start to implement the an impact and legacy journey for associations. It is setting destinations apart, and we can see it in the increase in entries for the incredible impacts year on year. So it is happening more and more. More and more people are talking about it, understanding it, and delivering it. So if you're not on that journey, you really better get started. And as global citizens, it's something that we should be doing anyway. If we can make a difference that's beyond that economic measurement, then we should be. But it all starts with a conversation, and the earlier the better. And that whether that's with your association, your conference ambassador, or with other destinations who are delivering it, we're all happy to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Mila, what would you say? What would your parting word be from Flanders? You were an early adopters on this journey.
I'll confirm what Sam says. It's not rocket science. It's not super mega difficult. It may sound scary, impact, legacy, all big words, but all it takes is a bit of courage, some dedication, but specifically the shift in mindset. It's just about shifting the conversation from purely conference organization to how think differently about what the conference can do for the destination, for the stakeholders. And it's I can only, from a personal perspective, it's very enriching for me personally. So it's definitely, if you get involved, you'll find it very enriching personally, but also for your organization. So it's you're doing well for the globe, but also you'll find it very fun to do, I think.
Adrian, any final words on behalf of Cape Town?
Yeah, I think probably finally I would say, don't be intimidated when the resources are not there. Don't let that be a reason why you're not having the conversations. There are a lot of destinations with minimal resources that are on this journey. And I think that sometimes we don't ask associations the right questions from the start. We always put a lot of pressure on ourselves to come up with solutions. And often those are not aligned with what the associations might deem important. And so a word of advice is identify what's your priorities and ask the questions. Is it important? Is it not important? And you can build from there.
That's great. I'm going to leave it there with our conversation. I'm going to switch just very quickly back to the presentation, Katie, if we can. I just want to talk a little bit about the Incredible Impacts Award, which were referenced a couple times for 2 minutes, and then we're going to leave 10 minutes at the end for some questions. So the Incredible Impacts Award, which we heard some, I said off the top again, it's something that we do in partnership at Best Cities with ICA, which is the International Conference and Congress Association. We launched it about 9 years ago. And it includes 2 monetary awards. And the idea basically is that we're there to help encourage associations that are on their impact and legacy journey. The Incredible Impact Grant, the first one, the $20,000 US one, is awarded to an event or congress that's already happened. And it is there to reward them for a job well done on creating a positive impact on the world and hopefully encourage them to do more. Part of the application includes what they might do with the award money as they move forward. The Incredible Impacts Seed Fund Grant is less, it's $5,000, and it's there for associations that want to get started and then that their event hasn't occurred yet. And so it's there to help them get kick-started. And I didn't ask for the case studies, but I must give a shout out. Flanders won with their client, the European Academy of Childhood Disability Congress in 2024, won the Incredible Impact Grant. Fulcha Ireland has won both the Incredible Impact and the Seed Grant, one with Rural Wonka, which is the Rural Doctors, and the other one with Autism Ireland. So all winners on this stage here today. And again, what's really great about this in the program is that I'm at the association one, but the destinations have worked hand in hand in making that happen, and they've done it together. It really is something that they both do. So next slide, please there, Katie. If you're interested or have what you think might be a great entry, and keep in mind, one of the points we made on this is that it's really about communicating what some people are already doing. So there is an opportunity, I think, for everyone to think about this. Best Cities, we're having a community cafe on Thursday, March 19th. We're running it twice from 9 to 10 and from 5 to 6 p.m. Central European time. tips on crafting a winning entry for Incredible Impacts. And we'll go over how you do the nomination, how that all works, and hear from some finalists and previous winners about what was the sort of secret sauce and the magic to them doing that. So if you're interested, I would highly recommend coming along. Bring a client with you if you have one in mind. It's a great way to connect with them and do that. Next slide, please. And I won't spend too much time on this next one, but it's just the timeline. If you are interested in applying for that grant, the first round submissions, the deadline, and we're very strict with the deadline, is June 2nd. And then there's judging that happens from previous winners and whatnot throughout the summer. But the winner, the three finalists, I should say, the three finalists for the Incredible Impacts Grant are actually flown, expenses paid on behalf of Best Cities in ICA to the ICA Congress, which this year will be in the middle of November 9th to 11th, or 8th to 11th in Panama City, Panama. So it's a great experience. As I said, people here on this call have already done it, and it's something that's worthwhile doing. The Seed FUD grant, that gets announced a little bit earlier, and we recognize the winner on stage, but they aren't necessarily taken to the award ceremony. So just wanted to give a little plug for Incredible Impacts. Would love to see people get involved in that. So thank you for that. Next slide, please, there, Katie. And I think this is where we're time for Ask Anything. So great. 9 minutes left for questions. I went 1 minute over time there, Claire. We're doing well. We're doing well.
So we do have some questions coming through. And one of them was about real life examples. And I feel that you've already answered that. And certainly I can add to that a little bit, because I spoke to the Fulcher Island team for our report, and they mentioned some of their examples. And I also spoke to, I think it's the IPVS, who won one of your grants, Lauren.
Yep.
And she talked about the work that they've done around spreading awareness about the HPV virus and vaccinations, etc., with Glasgow. So there are some examples in our report as well as on the Best Cities website. So hopefully that will be helpful. I'm going to come to this sticky question first of all, just in case we run out of time. And this was about creating an Indigenous client program. This is from Alison Robb, who I believe is in Calgary. And I would just say, I'm an event organizer, and I am currently doing my second event in Vancouver, and we've also organised events in Australia. And so I'm kind of familiar with this, problem, challenge, question. But Alison says that trying to encourage event organisers to work with the local Indigenous community, whether that's getting an elder blessing or having an Indigenous art market. And she says that working with Indigenous communities is very different, and it's sometimes difficult to get clients to understand this. Now, you may not have direct experience of this challenge in Flanders and in Ireland, and I guess not in Cape Town, but in terms of working with community groups who, are not businesses, who might have a different approach or speed of approach to life and to discussing things, do you have any tips of bringing those community groups and your association or event clients together?
I'm just going to quickly jump in on a little bit on that, Claire. And again, it's not my day-to-day, but I'll just being Canadian and obviously representing Vancouver, but also Melbourne, Australia, which has a very, very rich Indigenous sustainability event guide for meeting planners coming to their destination. They are very, very proactive at involving, as we've said, those local stakeholders, and those local stakeholders include Indigenous communities with whom they work. So they've got some pre-established relationships, and I think they, as I said, the DMO is a broker, and I think they very much are active about working as a broker with those local Indigenous communities. So again, it's not directly answering Alison's question because she's in Calgary, and so it depends on which. I don't know what that DMO has set up specifically in terms of being able to work with the Indigenous communities. But for those destinations that have that set up, it certainly makes it a lot easier because they're skilled at already not only working with the local communities, but as she said, working with clients to understand the speed of that. But the one tip I might say, Alison, is just, I referenced that study off the top, the 586 associations. And one of their top 4 priorities when it came to legacy and impact was that they truly do want to have that immersive sense of local culture. They don't want to just come in and out. Like, there's a growing need for that sense of place and whatever. And I think it just takes a little bit of explanation and heart and passion, and maybe a connection with one of the local Indigenous leaders off the top during a site inspection or during the initial conversations to understand how much that is of sense of place. And if they want to truly feel immersive and understand that local bit, which many of them are saying that they do, 70%, as I said off the top, I think there's that level of understanding. But I understand the question, and I actually know Alison, so we can talk more about that offline if you like.
Anybody else? As an event organizer, just please talk to me about it as early as you can, because it's been brought to me too late as well, and then I don't know how to create room in my program for this now.
That's an excellent point as well. Anything from the panelists to add in there? Sorry, I jumped in there. I'm sorry to hear that there is a challenge. It surprises me that clients are not interested in engaging with that authentic experience. So maybe you're speaking to the wrong clients, Alison.
I don't even know if it's that they're not interested. It's that it's a different conversation, or it's a different approach to the conversation.
Yeah, but I think she said you couldn't get clients to interested. So yeah, I think the early conversation, without doubt, and I liked your piece about the site inspection. Might not even be an engagement with an elder in a site inspection, but tell the sow the story or sow the seed of the story of the lands that they're on. A true local experience will have to include that, and certainly it's becoming table stakes here in Canada and certainly in Australia as well. Yeah. Any other questions? We have time for another question.
Yeah, there's one more question that's come through. I'm going to read this out as it's written, because you may understand it better than me. What are your thoughts on seed funding startup events versus providing funding opportunities for previously established events? Maybe there's something in there about your experience of delivering legacy or impact with new events versus more established events, which might already be thinking along that way.
Again, I'll just talk from a best cities, larger perspective, because we literally have the Seed Fund Grant Award and the Legacy Impact Award. Again, it's very different. So, something that's established, we want to see that measurement and impact delivery. For a successful impact award, we want to see that there was a measurement in place and the data to prove that it happened and it worked is there. The Seed Fund grant can be a little bit more fluid. We want to see that there's an idea and a plan in place, but obviously if it hasn't happened yet, you don't have those numbers. But I do think it is so important to help people get started. And I'll give you a concrete example that you referenced there, Claire. International papilloma virus, IPV, that you interviewed for your report. I might get the year wrong, but let's say 3 years ago, they won the Seed Grant Award, and they used that money to create a legacy and impact project. And once they got that award, that recognition internally for their board got them excited. And they started embedding it into every future program that they have. They ended up being a finalist for this last year for the main grant award based on what they had done with the Seed Grant Fund money. And so that journey was really exciting to see. And so I think giving that Seed Fund grant, I think it can lead to so much. It's very aptly named. And the other one little point I'll make about IPVS, which was so cool, is what they're doing as they move forward is they go to very different places. And again, I want to say they were in Athens and Thailand and somewhere in the Middle East. And it looks very different what impact and legacy is in each of those destinations, but they're still doing it. They're adapting it, whatever. So the seed was planted. And so giving that money there and starting the association to get them looking that way was just so valuable.
That's it. Thank you very much. I think we're out of questions. I suspect that some people like me started to write them down and then you answered them because you so expertly covered the ground in your conversation. So thank you everybody for joining us today. And on your behalf, I'd like to thank Sam and Milo and Adrian and Lauren for spending some time with us today and talking about this very important topic. We will send out a follow-up email with some links to more resources. But for now, thank you all very much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye.